Good afternoon, teammates, and thanks for joining me and my good friend Jay France, the Command Senior Enlisted Leader from United States Transportation Command, in today's town hall. As we continue to work through this pandemic, we're still working with the services and the combatant commands to be your conduits of information. So I want to thank you once again for all of the hard work and the candid questions that you have placed forward for us to deal with. Your feedback clearly has been critical to the creation of policy and some of the tailoring of the mechanisms that we have in place to navigate through these treacherous waters. But please continue sending them, because it is really something that is important for all of us to make sure that we're marching in the right direction. I want to thank all of you for submitting your questions today. There's a lot of them that we will not be able to get through the first 30 minutes, but rest assured that in between the social media post and the after action for this town hall, we'll be able to go ahead and answer as many as possible. And please, again, keep them coming. Before we get into the question and answer period, we'd like to provide you with an update on what Transcom is doing right now to, number one, help you with your PCS move during the peak of the season and the restrictions of the stop movement, and also some of the mechanisms that we have put in place to keep you and your family safe. We will also like to take a moment to go ahead and talk about the recently awarded contract for future household goods movements, which there's a lot of good information in there for the benefit of you and your families. I also want to know that the transcript from today's town hall will be posted right here in this thread, and we will also make it available for anyone who does not have access to Facebook. Thank you again for joining us, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to Chief France for his opening comments. Jay, over to you.
Hey, good afternoon, SEAC. Thanks for having me on to discuss some important topics that are on the minds of our people and their families as we navigate through the challenges that COVID-19 has presented and will continue to present to us. And thanks to everyone for joining us live today, as well as everyone who submitted questions. As the SEAC said, these forums give us the opportunity to get your feedback, to hear what's on your minds, and help us ensure we're getting after the issues that are impacting you and your families, not only for the moves that are being executed right now during the current stop movement order, but as we come out of this and shift our focus to the large number of moves that will occur once the order is lifted. I look forward to providing you some information I hope you'll find useful, and I look forward to the discussion and the questions. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Jay. So I'd like to first kick off our town hall talking about Transcom's unique role in overseeing all of the moves across the Joint Force and what it looks like during COVID-19, as well as some important safety measures being taken to protect our people. So can you talk a little bit about the relationship between U.S. Transcom, Transportation Command, and the services as it relates to the PCS moves coming for the people that have been affected by the stop movement?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been working with the Joint Staff and the services every step of the way during the stop move, and it's been a team effort 100% of the time. We're staying connected throughout this process by hosting weekly virtual meetings with key stakeholders to make sure we're all on the same page. One is with the Joint Staff and the services, like I said, every single week. Another is with the personal property offices and vehicle processing centers across the DoD to make sure that they're informed. Another is also with industry to share information and address concerns to make sure that we are still meeting the needs of our people. Now, one example of the things we talk about at these meetings is, actually, it's tomorrow. Our team is meeting with the senior leaders from the services and OSD to discuss allocation of capacity for moves that will occur after the stop move when PCSs pick up. Again, this has been a team effort all along. I'd also like to take a moment to provide some clarity on roles and responsibilities between Transcom, the services, and OSD specific to what we're doing during the stop move. Now, the Office of the Secretary of Defense issued the stop movement order and established how services can make exceptions to policy. And the services are authorized to grant exceptions to the stop movement policy to meet their requirements. Now, each service is executing a little bit differently to meet those requirements. Now, at Transcom, we run the Defense Personal Property Program, also known as DP3, which is actually executed by the services. Now, specific to PCS moves and waivers under the current stop movement order, Transcom does a few things. One, we set the conditions with industry and establish business rules so we can continue to move our people and families during the stop move. We also share exception to policy information with all of the personal property offices across the DoD so they can service customers from all of the services. An example would be if a soldier is assigned on an Air Force base, that soldier can go down to an Air Force traffic management office and still get the exact service that they need based on their service requirements throughout this. We communicate with the moving industry so they can continue to operate and service our folks, and we share information through our move.mil website and communicate through the emails that are going direct to every service member, PCS, and during the stop move. Also, those service members can communicate through our customer support center if a service member is ever unable to get an issue resolved through their chain of command, their local transportation office, or customer service hotlines that each individual service has. Now, I'd like to mention a few things that the services are responsible for that are sometimes thought to be responsibilities of Transcom, so I'm going to level the bubble here. One of the things that the services do is decide which service members should move and which should not. The services also grant those exceptions to policy for service members who are ordered or authorized to move. The services prioritize the movement of service members who are actually ordered or authorized to move, and they decide when those moves will actually occur. So hopefully that was helpful in getting a few of those things out there.
No, thanks, Dan. I appreciate you helping making that distinction, specifically with the services doing the accession to policies, the priorities, and the timing for those moves. But I also know that General Lyons here recently published a letter, and it's a commitment letter to all personnel that are getting ready to move here during COVID-19. Can you share with us a little bit what are the contents and what is said on that letter?
Yeah, absolutely. The document you're referencing is posted on move.mil, and the document is titled Our Commitment to DP3 Customers While Moving in a COVID Environment. And basically it captures our commitment to delivering that safe, quality moving and storage service to our service members and families who have been directed or authorized to relocate right now. Now it's broken down into 3 sections, safety, decision-making, and resources. Now under safety, it covers the requirement for the moving industry to adhere to Center for Disease Control protocols regarding health protection while working in service members' homes. Those measures include face coverings, minimizing crew size to enable social distancing, the fact that crews must practice good hygiene, and they also must routinely clean frequently touched surfaces in our service members' homes. All of this right now, I need to be clear also, applies to on-base and off-base moves. So nothing changes regardless of if the member lives on base, off-post, or off. It also covers the illness screening verification that moving companies are required to provide in writing to service members, and it states that moving crews need to be equipped with protective equipment when working inside homes. Basically behind that moving company shows up, they have certified or they provide written certification or verification that they have conducted screening on that crew that is going to be working with that family every single day, and they provide it to that family in writing. It also covers expectations for our service members and families to comply with CDC guidance as well, and to notify their transportation office or moving company if they, being the service member, or a member of their family are ill or have been directed to self-quarantine. So this is a safety measure on both sides. Now under decision-making, it states that service members are empowered to do a few things. They are empowered to decide who enters their residence. They are empowered to question moving company personnel on their adherence to safety protocols. And they're also empowered to say stop at any point in the process if they feel that their safety or the safety of their family is being compromised. And they also are empowered to ask to have their move rescheduled. Now, under the resources section of that document, it covers the requirement for a DoD representative to contact them during the relocation process to verify that the moving company is following all safety protocols. And it also says that that DoD representative is required to take swift corrective action. Now, that DoD representative could be one of many things. It could be a member of that individual's chain of command. It could be a representative from that local installation or transportation moving office as well. But someone, a rep from the DoD, will contact each and every service member at some point during their move. Now, it's important to note here that if a service member is uncomfortable at any time during the pack-out or delivery process, they should stop everything, notify their chain of command immediately, and then work together with the local transportation office and service provider to resolve whatever issue that is. Now, finally, at the bottom of that commitment document is information and phone numbers for local transportation offices, branch or service customer service numbers, and Transcom's customer support number. I want to take an opportunity here, too, to also speak at the importance of the chain of command in this process. Now, we really need leaders at all levels to dig into this information I just talked about so they can better prepare themselves to take care of our people and their families.
Thank you, Jay, for that very helpful background on the document and the intent of it. And again, having our members as the driving force between right and wrong and who gets to access their residence is extremely important. But the most important thing that I see in this document is when the numbers were pushed out for each one of the services to be able to call if there are any issues, the secretary was very keen to make sure that they didn't get a robot or some answering service, press 1, press 2, or press 3. He specifically stated that he wanted a human to be able to go ahead and answer that call. So I really appreciate all the hard work that you and Transcom have put into this to make this happen, and again, with the safety of our people in mind, first and foremost. So again, Jay, thank you so much for that background, and now let's move on to answering some of the questions that were submitted by you, our audience here today. So our first two questions deal with overall safety. This question comes from Carrie Smith at Naval Base Coronado. And the question is, what safety precautions are moving staff required to take when packing and unpacking household goods? Also, parallel to that question, and this one comes from Stephanie Matthews Groves, who asked, how is Transcom mitigating mover screws traveling from out of our specified local area and quarantine requirements to prevent the spread? So, Jay, two questions there. Safety, implementation, and also crossing borders from state to state and dealing with COVID restrictions. Over to you.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'll wrap up, one consolidated response to two of those. As far as the safety aspect, our crews are required to wear face coverings per CDC guidelines. They need to be equipped and prepared to clean surfaces they touch in the residence throughout the day, even though they're going to seek permission from the residents to do so. They're going to present the smallest crew required for each home, so they're going to minimize the number of people that are actually inside of that home conducting work, and those moving companies are required to equip those folks to maintain good hygiene, face masks, et cetera. As far as crossing through different regions of the country, at each time they go to pick up or go to deliver, that crew, a member of that crew or that moving company will do that certification real time for those individuals to screen to see if they have any symptoms as outlined in the CDC guidance. Now, I need to be very, very clear on this. Use the word mitigate, or the young lady used the word mitigate, and that's important as well. We are doing everything we reasonably can to mitigate, but very hard to prevent, very hard to, as far as test accuracy goes, or, sometimes we get the question about, can we test? We have explored those things, and what we have found is this certification is the best and most reasonable thing we can do to keep things moving.
No, thank you, Jay. That's very insightful, and thanks again for the thoroughness on the response and also the reality of what to expect. So our next question comes from Master Sergeant Andrew DeCola in Fort Drum in reference to personally procured moves, formerly known for us all heads as DITY moves, do-it-yourself moves, and compensation during COVID. So his question is, will compensation for performing a PPM be increased to facilitate the new 14-day quarantine requirements? If not, will a MILPER message, all ALARAC, which is an all-Army activity message, directing local commanders to allow personnel performing a PPM to house on or sign for an unposed quarters and move as in part of the quarantine activities? So is there compensation for the extended time due to quarantine requirements? So thank you for your question, Master Sergeant DeCola. And we actually had to do a little bit of research on this one to follow the ALARAC, the All-Army Activity Message that you mentioned. But the bottom line up front on that one is that the ALARAC clearly states that the soldier will initiate the request for ETP, exception to policy, in a DA Form 4187 to the 06 level commander and the losing Command G1. So go to your military personnel flight or processing center and ask the question about your exception to policy in the case that you run into any hardship. So thank you so much for that question. And if you have any follow-on questions, please follow up on our thread and we'll get right back to you. Our next question comes from Tech Sergeant Matthew Angel in Royal Air Force Lakenheath on the prioritization of moves for families with school-aged children. The question is, information was put out to the branches about units developing a prioritization system for PCS and mentioned that families with school-aged children should be considered in the development of the plan. This doesn't seem to be the case, at least in the Air Force. My DROs, my departure return from overseas location was originally August, and now it is October. Will it still be possible to move during the summer break from school? So, Jay, you kind of touched upon this one in your opening comments, but let's revisit it so that we're clear. The exception to policies for DROs and also the flexibility moves rest with the installation commander, correct? And can you elaborate just a little bit more?
Well, each of the services is executing their exceptions to policy a little bit differently. So again, each service will do that a little bit, like I said, a little bit differently. As far as what this young man can do is obviously to get informed on exactly what exception of policy might apply to him and his family, and definitely important to work with his chain of command to make sure that they help him out and follow that individual services exception of policy guidance. However, Transcom, we defer to the services to take care of those ETPs. But the piece that I have is again going back to the chain of command and leaders at all levels understanding that service to exception policy guidance.
Thanks, Jay. Really appreciate it. And for the audience, I hope that clarifies that particular issue there. Our next question is from Air Force Pals Misty Duhan, and this is in regards to paternity leave. So her question comes to get a waiver for paternity leave since her husband has been overseas and missed the birth of their son. Now, due to the restrictions, her husband has not been able to meet his new son. So, again, Misty, thank you so much for the question, and also congratulations on the new addition to the family. These waivers for stop movement rest with the installation commanders and also the chain of command. But I also want to be cognizant that there are certain places, depending where your husband is deployed, to where we're going to have restrictions based on the movement. And the host country will definitely have a say on when members move in and out of those countries. So in order to get you some help, we need to know a little bit more about the particulars of your situation. And then, obviously, we will go ahead and work with the Chief Master of the Air Force and his team to be able to get you to the right answer and get Airman or Sergeant Duhan to be able to go ahead and be with his new son. So, again, congratulations, and I hope everything is well and that the whole family is healthy. Our next question comes from Joel Castillo on moving pets. And his question is, what is being done for moving service members' pets from Japan to the United States, which is a very, very tedious process? So, Jay, what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. To my knowledge, and we've checked, there is currently no impact on service members moving pets from Japan back to the United States. And I will say, everybody on the net right now, if you're coming up on a move and you have questions about moving with pets, that you go to Air Mobility Command's pet travel page. You can Google it. It's the first thing that pops up, and there's great information in there and links to specific pet travel guidance, includes helpful hints, and a section on DoD transportation guidelines. Now, a couple things that stick out to me on there is, pet movement is limited to passengers in PCS status. Pet space is very limited on Air Mobility Command Patriot Express flights, or rotators as we know them. Pet spaces are booked on a first-come, first-served basis, and also really important to know that to book pet spaces, You contact your local TMO and ITO as early as possible, and you do not need your orders at the time of booking. So I would say get on that pretty fast. Pets are, part of our families today, but there are still, sometimes limited opportunity to move those, but that's going to come down sometimes to a service member being proactive and planning ahead.
No, thank you, Jay. And is there a requirement for pets to exercise social distancing and wear masks?
There is actually.
I'm kidding.
That's also on the AMC page. No, I'm just kidding. But I have actually seen that, and it's pretty interesting.
No, thanks. And again, the space is limited, and it's on a first come, first served basis. So please be proactive in getting your pets home. They're also family to all of us. So Jay, I did want to take a little bit of time to discuss the new contract when it comes to household goods. Can you talk a little bit more about how this contract will improve the overall experience and the claims process for our families listening today?
Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit of background. Each year the DoD relocates over 400,000 service members, DoD civilians and their families. It's one of, if not the most stressful portion of the relocation process is actually moving your household goods. I know you've moved a lot. I certainly have as well. And for years, our people and families have had to deal with poor service, poor communication, inadequate systems and digital tools, challenges with scheduling, delayed deliveries, loss and damage processes, and a poor claims process. So on 30 April, Transcom, on behalf of the Department of Defense, awarded a global household goods contract to American Roll-On Roll-Off Carrier Group. The development of this contract was a collaborative effort between Transcom and the military services. We have been in sync throughout the entire process, and there has been an incredible amount of teamwork to get us there, to include service members and families who have shared their experiences and recommendations with us. DoD families have been our North Star through this entire process, and the only reason we're doing this. And this contract puts us on the right path to fixing the problems I just mentioned and to deliver the quality service our people and our families are going into the future. I need to be clear, though, that although we're excited about this major milestone in a broad reform effort for the Defense Personal Property Program, we still have a lot of work ahead of us to get where we need to be. Now, the first move under the new contract will execute in February of 2021 for domestic moves, and we'll actually really start to see the results of this later in 2021. Now, overseas moves are going to fall under the new contract in 2022. Now, in the interim, for moves between now and February, when the new contract goes into execution, we're making improvements to some of the problem areas like the claims process, inconvenience claims, expending background checks for moving company employees, and also addressing some customer support response times. Now, those changes go into effect tomorrow, which is actually the first day of the peak season. Now, on a personal perspective, been in a little over 30 years now, have 15 moves, 9 of those with a family, and I have experienced the pain of moving. And each of those examples that I provided just a few seconds ago, I've personally experienced, as well as, the high amount of phone calls and emails I've gotten since taking this position. And I will say with confidence that not one thing that I have experienced personally or any of the stories that have been shared with me is not being addressed in here. We are taking for action those things and getting after it, and our service members and families are going to have a great experience coming out of this.
No, and I think that this is something that is way overdue, Jay. So I really thank you and General Lyons for taking the lead on making this process better for all of our families and our civilian employees and families that are moving on a constant basis. Right now, I wanted to take a little bit of time to touch base with my teammate, Ms. Christiane Witten, to see if we have any additional questions that came live while we were discussing all of the Transcom issues with Chief Master Sergeant Franz. So, Christiane, over to you.
Okay, so SEAC, we have a question that came through, kind of touching base again on the pet question from Megan Meredith Harless. And it looks like she's also a pet owner, and her concern is that moving with pets in this current environment, many commercial airlines are not allowing pets, and a military flight with pet spots is often limited, so many families are being forced to leave their pets behind, and pet shipping services can be quite costly. So do you all have any sort of guidance, or is this something that you all are tracking?
So, Jay, I'll go ahead and take the first crack at that one, and then I'll turn it over to you for the specifics. But I know that every time we have had a situation where families were incurring costs because of the stop movement and the limitation of assets, we have found a way to go ahead and compensate them or come up with a mechanism to be able to take care of them. So if it's something that we have not done yet, we will certainly look at it. But, Jay, over to you. Not aware if you have something to mitigate this type of hardship.
Yeah, when we look at, one of the resources that's on that Air Mobility Command site that I pushed out are links to the carrier guidance for those individual carriers that we use sometimes. And we maximize, absolutely, the opportunities to move, when we can, pets with their folks. Now, different times throughout the year, peak season also, coincides with a warmer time of year. So some of these carriers that we use and work with will not allow those pets. But, I assure you, we take every effort that we can within our authority to get those pets on those flights based on the space we have available.
Well, thank you, Jay. And the space available piece is clear, but something that I'm not particularly clear on is to see if we can go ahead and reimburse people for the shipment of pets. So we'll go ahead and take that for action and see if we can get you an answer. So we'll get back to you on that one. Any other questions, Christiane?
Yes, SEAC. So this one comes from the National Capital Region. Can you share anything about the stop movement end date and how it is impacting PCS moves? Do you think it needs to be extended beyond 30 June?
So the question is about the current stop movement date, which is 30 June. Every 15 days, we're conducting a review to make sure that the implementation of practices makes sense. And we're taking a common sense approach to everything that we're doing with regards to the restrictions imposed by COVID-19. Whether it's going to be extended or stopped, it is yet to be determined. We had a meeting today to have a conversation with the Secretary of Defense on just that subject to see what mitigating factors need to be in place in order for us to conduct our operations safely and allow people the freedom to go ahead and go on with their lives. More to follow on that one, and the decision should be made here in the next couple of weeks on what the next step is when it comes to the health protection condition level across our base, post, and installation, the freedom of movement to be able to go ahead and take leave, and also with increased PCS moves as we relax the restrictions put in place. We have a national mandate to where the president is going to go ahead and provide guidance to the states on reopening. There's also going to be government state guidance that is going to vary from state to state. And we also have to make sure that we remain sensitive to what is going on in separate hotspots across the United States of America before we make decisions on how to relax and continue the moves. But rest assured that our number one priority is to make sure that we do things safely right now and that we're able to go ahead and relieve the stress that you and your families are experiencing because of the staff movement. So thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, so we have two more, SEAC, from the Pentagon. How long do you think we will be experiencing COVID-19 restrictions? And then I have an additional one regarding when do you think we'll be able to take leave?
So COVID-19 restrictions will be in place until COVID quits infecting our people. It is just a fact. We do not have a vaccine. Right now, we're taking every mechanism possible, social distancing, face covering, quarantine, isolation, in order to prevent the fire from keep on spreading. Think of it as the mitigating options that we have at this moment as fire breaks on a road to be able to keep the fire controlled and keep it from spreading to a larger scale. But until we have that big fire hose, which is that vaccine, and possibly a mitigating mechanism that will keep the disease at bay and that it will not force anyone with underlying conditions to incur death, then we need to make sure that we do things safely to the greatest extent possible. Now, rest assured that we have a defense mission to carry on, and defense waits for no one. So we will continue to assume as much risk as possible to be able to affect our mission. But we need to make sure that when we do not need to assume risk, that we maintain the proper posture to keep you and your family safe. Now, to the second part of the question regarding leave, right now there's a local area restriction where you can and your family members can take leave. And there's also waiver mechanisms to make sure that if there's something that is critical, that we're allowing you and your families to go where you need to go. But again, this is all related to the health protection conditions in place and the mechanisms that we have instituted in order to keep you safe. So again, more to follow on that one. Any other questions?
We're good.
All right, so we're getting right now to the 30-minute mark. So again, I want to thank every single one of you for joining us today. And Jay, I want to give you the floor for you to provide any closing comments you may have.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again for hosting this event, SEAC, and thanks for everyone who was online with us today and for those who submitted questions earlier in the week. And we're definitely all in this together, and there's a lot of hard work going on to make sure our most precious resource, our people, and their families are taken care of. And I'll close with saying again, leaders at all levels, please educate yourself. Please stay informed, be proactive, stay engaged, and take care of our people and our families as we navigate through this COVID-19 situation. That's all I have.
No, thank you, Jay. And again, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this for our people. It's important. We have a lot of stress out there, and we also have a lot of changes that we need to go ahead and cope with. But your guidance, your information has been very clear, and we will also make sure that we provide all of the links to the documents and information that Chief Franz put out. I mentioned earlier at the beginning that we will also be posting the transcript of this town hall for your information and also to go ahead and pass it on to anybody that didn't have the opportunity to go and listen to have the opportunity to listen to us today. And we'll also do our best to circle back to any other questions that we didn't get an opportunity to answer and those that we still owe you an answer, as in the PEC question, for example. Jay mentioned that he moved about 15 times in his career, and Janet and I have moved about 13 times. And every time it's just as stressful as the next. And COVID wasn't a part of any of those moves, so we can only imagine the stress that you're going through. But it is because we're aware and because we have lived through this that we want to put our best foot forward to make sure that we're helping you and your families get through this. We also understand the hardship and the uncertainty that the Stop Movement Memorandum and the mechanisms are creating on you and your families. But trust that every day we're critically thinking about every possible way that we can go ahead and mitigate the risk to make sure that we go on to life in the new normal, or as normal as possible. So I encourage each and every one of you to continue to send us your feedback on any issues that are happening at the lowest levels, because either us, the combatant commands, or the service senior enlisted leaders are standing by to be able to help you and go ahead and find a solution to your problem. So please keep it coming. Keep the communication lines open, and we'll be closely monitoring our Facebook and LinkedIn pages for any other information that you push forward. And I'll close by telling you and reassuring you that we're in this together, and we will continue to look out for each other. So thank you very much, and have a great day.